There's an invisible force at work in every bottle of wine, one that determines its flavor, texture, and even aroma. It's not the grape, the barrel, or the climate. It's yeast. Welcome to Toast to Wine, your go-to guide for wine, spirits, and food pairings. Whether you're a novice or just curious, we're here to help you build confidence and explore the world of flavor. Subscribe and join the journey with us today. Yeast might not be the first thing that comes to mind when thinking about wine, but without it, there would be no wine at all. It's the microscopic powerhouse responsible for turning grape juice into alcohol, but its role goes far beyond fermentation. Yeast choices, both natural and cultivated, can influence a wine's flavor profile in ways that most people never realize. From fruity notes to rich complexity, yeast plays a crucial role in shaping what ends up in your glass. But here's the twist. Winemakers don't just let yeast do its thing and call it a day. There's a secret technique that some winemakers use after fermentation to enhance texture and depth. It's called batonnage, and we'll uncover how this winemaking trick transforms wine later in the video, so stick around. And by the way, there is a list of wine items that may interest you in the description below. Take a look once you finish the video. What does yeast have to do with wine's flavor? At its core, yeast is a single-celled organism that feeds on sugar and produces alcohol and carbon dioxide in return. But the process doesn't stop there. Yeast also releases a variety of aromatic compounds that influence a wine's taste and smell. For example, certain yeast strains create tropical fruit notes in Sauvignon Blanc, while others bring out the buttery smoothness in a Chardonnay. Some even enhance earthy or spicy characteristics in red wines like Pinot Noir or Syrah. And here's a question for you. Have you ever noticed a wine tasting bready or having a subtle hint of yeast like fresh baked bread or brioche? That's the yeast at work. Let us know in the comments if you've ever picked up on those flavors in your wine. Where does yeast come from? Most people don't realize this, but yeast isn't something winemakers always add. It's naturally present in vineyards. Yeast lives on grape skins, leaves, and stems, forming an invisible community that clings to the fruit before it's even harvested. When grapes are crushed, this natural yeast can start fermentation on its own. This is known as natural yeast fermentation, a method used by some traditional and minimal intervention winemakers. However, there's a catch. Natural yeast is unpredictable. Unlike cultivated yeast, which is selected for reliability, natural yeast can vary from batch to batch. Some fermentations go smoothly, while others might take unexpected turns, resulting in wines with complex, sometimes funky flavors. Winemakers who embrace natural yeast fermentation often say it gives their wines more character, unique terroir-driven notes that can't be replicated. These wines might develop aromas of wildflowers, earthy undertones, or even a touch of minerality. Have you ever tried a naturally fermented wine? If so, did you notice anything different about it? Drop a comment and let's talk about it. Cultivated yeast, the winemaker's choice. On the other side of the spectrum, many winemakers opt for cultivated yeast. These are laboratory-selected yeast strains designed to control the fermentation process and bring out specific flavor profiles. For example, some yeast strains enhance fruity aromas, making a wine taste more vibrant and juicy. Others boost the perception of body and mouthfeel, creating a richer texture. Some yeasts are even engineered to ferment at cooler temperatures, preserving delicate floral and citrus notes in white wines. This predictability is why many large-scale wineries rely on cultivated yeast. It ensures consistency from vintage to vintage. A winery in Napa, for instance, can use the same yeast strain every year and get nearly identical results. But does cultivated yeast make a wine less authentic? That's up for debate. Do you think winemakers should embrace the unpredictability of natural yeast? Or do you prefer a more consistent wine experience? Let us know your thoughts below. Batonnage. Stirring up dead yeast for richer wine. Now, remember the secret winemaking technique we teased earlier? It's called batonnage, and it's all about what happens after fermentation. Once yeast has done its job and the fermentation is complete, the yeast cells die off and settle at the bottom of the wine barrel. Instead of removing them right away, some winemakers stir these dead yeast cells, called lees, back into the wine. Why? Because this process adds texture and depth, making the wine feel creamier on the palate, releases compounds that enhance richness and complexity, and softens acidity, making the wine smoother and more rounded. This technique is commonly used in certain Chardonnays and sparkling wines, giving them a luxurious, almost velvety mouthfeel. Think of a classic French Burgundy or a high-quality champagne. That signature richness often comes from batonnage. So, the next time you pour yourself a glass of wine, remember, it's not just the grape variety or the region that shapes its flavor. Yeast plays a silent but powerful role, determining everything from aroma to mouthfeel. Whether it's wild and unpredictable or carefully cultivated, yeast is the unsung hero of winemaking. And if you want to experience this for yourself, try comparing a naturally fermented wine with one made using cultivated yeast. You might be surprised at the difference. And let us know in the comments, what's your favorite wine style? And have you ever noticed the influence of yeast in a wine's flavor? Click on one of these videos now to continue your wine, spirit, and food journey. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest videos. If you have any questions or topics you'd like me to cover, leave a comment below. As you explore the richness of wine, spirits, and food, may your experiences be full of joy and discovery. See you next time on Toast to Wine.